friends, it's Ashley here from the Loopy Lamb and theloopylamb.com on behalf of our friends at Clover USA, and today I'm here to show you how to make a flat panel piece on your Clover Wonder Knitter. This is a really simple and very slight change to knitting in the round, and you can use these little panels to create things like doll scarves or make several of them and work them together. So what we'll need to make this panel today is we're going to need your Clover Wonder Knitter. I have mine outfitted with the yellow disc. This won't work with the purple disc. There aren't enough pegs. And a worsted weight yarn of your color and brand of preference. So let's grab our materials and let's get started. To begin flat panel knitting on your Clover Wonder Knitter, you're going to take the tail end of your yarn and feed it through the center of the Wonder Knitter and out through the bottom. Pin it at the back here with your hand so that way the tail doesn't come loose while you're casting on. Then we're going to take our working yarn and we're going to wrap it around the pegs in a clockwise motion like so. When you get to that last peg, you want to make sure that you're not moving on to that first peg that you wrapped, because then you'll be joining your panel and it will be knitting in the round, and we're interested in working in a panel today. So when you get to this last peg, you're going to wrap that one twice. I like to bring the yarn to the back just to help me with this last stitch here, because we want it to be stable while you're doing that. Okay, so now that I've done my first stitch, don't let go of that tail, by the way, because you don't want it to come unraveled. We're going to move our disc towards the left, and then we're going to put that yarn into the yarn guide. And then we're going to knit that bottom loop over the top loop of each of the stitches or pegs that you've wrapped to create your first set of cast on stitches. All right, so I have now worked all of the pegs, and now again, because we don't want to join that last and first peg together, we want to work in a panel, we're going to have to work in the opposite direction of what we just came. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our working yarn and we're going to work in the opposite direction of the direction we just came. So take your working yarn and wrap it around the front of the pegs, around the back, and then place that working yarn in the yarn guide. Now make sure it's not too tight, because if it is, the working yarn is too tight, then you're going to have troubles knitting that off when you come back to your next round. So starting with that first loop or first peg here, we're going to work the bottom loop over the top, and we're going to just work our way around the loom. Bottom over the top, bottom over the top. So again, you can see here that my working yarn is crossed over here. You have to make sure that you're paying attention to that, because if you don't and you just keep going in the round, you're going to have a tube and not a flat panel. So this is where you're going to stop. Take your yarn and you're going to lay it across the pegs again like so, and put it into that yarn feeder. And again, starting with that first peg, lifting the bottom loop over the top loop. Rotate your disc, bottom over the top. I'm going to work that all the way around until you get to that last peg. There we go. And then you would just keep doing this back and forth until your panel is your desired size. So again, we're going to take that working yarn, bring it around in front and around the loom, back into that yarn tensioner there, and we're going to knit each of the pegs around. Okay, so I'm going to keep working on this, and I'll be right back and I'll show you how to bind off your flat panel. All right, so I'm ready to bind off my work, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my working yarn and I'm going to lay it in front just like I'm about to just knit another round, and I'm going to knit that first and second peg. All right, so then I'm going to take my second stitch here, lift it off of the peg and place it onto that first peg. You want to make sure that you have a good tension there. You don't want anything that's too loose or too tight, or else it could just fall off your loom or you can't knit it off at all. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take that bottom loop, which is your first stitch, and knit it over the top like so. And then we're going to take that loop that we just created and we're going to move it onto the second peg. Okay, and you can see it's really loose right now, so I'm just going to tighten that up a little bit. Then I'm going to bring the working yarn in front of the third peg and I'm going to knit a stitch. And then I'm going to take that stitch off the peg and place it onto the peg before it. Then we're going to knit the bottom loop over the top. And then that loop comes off that peg and onto the next one. Again, just making sure you're watching that tension, because if it's too loose, you're going to have a really sloppy looking bind off here. So again, we're going to knit the next unworked stitch, take that loop off that peg, put it onto the peg before it, and then we're going to knit that bottom loop over the top, and then we're moving that loop back to the next peg. We're going to do that all the way around. We've only got 2 more here, so I'll show you here. We're going to knit the next peg, bring that loop up and over onto the peg before it, knit that bottom loop over the top, and move that loop to the next peg. And we're at our last stitch here. So what we're going to do is we're going to knit it, take that loop up off the peg onto the first one, and then we're going to knit the bottom loop over the top. But we still have this one loop left, and so what we're going to do is we're going to take our working yarn, wrap it around the peg, knit that stitch, then we're going to grab our scissors, cut a tail, and then you can remove that from the loom. You could pull that all the way through, and that's your bind off. It is a nice clean bind off, and it's not too stretchy. But if you find that your panel is curling, that is normal. So you will probably have to block it. If you're using an acrylic yarn, I recommend blocking with steam to get a nice flat panel like I have here. And that's how you do flat panel knitting on the Clover Wonder Knitter. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. We'd love to hear from you and we're happy to help. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to this channel. Thanks so much for watching, friends. Happy crafting, and I'll see you next time.